The Walking Dead sets the stage for a mid-season war in yet another unnecessarily long episode. Let's get one thing out of the way real quick: there was no reason for this episode of The Walking Dead to be 90 minutes long. Not a one. After last week's blunder of focusing a 75-minute-long episode of Tara and Heath, of all characters, the AMC series made another Season 7 shortcoming abundantly clear this week. That shortcoming's name? Negan. After all of Season 6's genuinely nerve-wracking teasing of the big baddie's arrival, each new week we actually spend in the guy's presence chips away at whatever made him scary to begin with, leaving a character who we're having trouble fearing or even finding all that interesting. And that's no good. Whether it's Jeffrey Dean Morgan's increasingly one-note portrayal or just the sheer one-dimensional way the writers have written him, or likely a combination of both, Negan is beginning to feel more like a plot device than an actual character. We know absolutely nothing about him or his motivations, which, in turn, is making subsequent horrible act he commits register with less and less impact. We know he's evil, it's time to tell us why. It's clear that the writers are enamored with the character, but a good villain needs to be more than just nihilistic violence and bizarrely unfunny jokes. That sort of Negan may work on the pages of a comic book, but for TV, it's becoming incredibly boring. Are we supposed to be fascinated by his peculiar fascination with an out-of-his-depth Carl, Chandler Riggs? Were we supposed to be scared when he forced the kid to sing "You Are My Sunshine" while he practiced swinging Lucille? If so, the writers are making it awfully difficult. At any rate, war seems imminent. Negan's in Alexandria getting super creepy with baby Judith, Rosita's, Christian Serrato's, Got Her Bullet, Macon's, Donna Guerrera, making that woman take her to the sanctuary, someone's aiding in Daryl's, Norman Reedus, escape from his cell, and Andrew Lincoln Rick's seeing about a houseboat in the middle of a walker-infested lake. When all parties collide in next week's mid-season finale, someone's surely going to die. But will we even care? The way things are going, that's looking less and less likely. Also, by the way this season is trending, odds on next week lasting a full 2 full hours. Are you having trouble investing in this slug of a season, or is it just us? Let us know in the comments below. The Walking Dead airs Sundays at 9 p.m. on AMC. Walking Dead, Carl takes matters with Negan into his own hands. The Walking Dead took us deep inside the Savior's sanctuary this week, with Carl, Chandler Riggs, going rogue in an attempt to kill Negan, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and free Alexandria from his grasp once and for all. Carl and Jesus, Tom Paine, start off in the back of the truck we saw them climb into back at Hilltop. Jesus deduces that they will be arriving soon and it would be wise to jump out and tail the truck the rest of the way. Carl seems nervous and suggests Jesus go first so Carl can see how best to jump. Once Jesus jumps off, he watches Carl continue on with the truck. At the sanctuary, Carl grabs an assault rifle out of a crate and lies in wait. Negan comes out as his men start unloading things. One of them notices Carl and Carl opens fire, killing 2 men. A tense standoff ensues that ends with Carl being tackled by Dwight, Austin Emilio. Rather than kill him, however, Negan decides to have some fun with Carl instead. Morgan continues to demonstrate his ability with the Negan role, taking a bite out of every scene with the sociopathic glee he has cultivated as the character. Negan takes Carl to meet his many wives, a group of savior women who agreed to marry him in exchange for special treatment for them and their loved ones. But all is not well in Negan's love nest. One of his wives had a dalliance with her former man, causing him to fail to perform an assigned task. He interrogates the woman, and she tearfully confesses. At the sanctuary, Negan takes Carl to his private quarters and forces him to remove the bandage over his eye. Carl unwillingly complies, but exposing the wound makes him weep. Negan tells him that his missing eye is a sign of toughness and that Carl should not cover it up. Negan then goes to administer the punishment for the savior who slept with his wife. He has the man tied to a chair and gives a speech to everyone about the importance of following the rules. Dwight has fired up a massive furnace in the sanctuary and hands Negan a red-hot iron that has been heating up inside. Negan takes the iron and uses it to burn the man's face, just like he previously did to Dwight. We sickeningly get to see the man's melted skin stick to the iron as Negan pulls it off, with the man having passed out in shock. Afterwards, Dwight and Sherry, Christine Evangelista, share a terse moment together in a back stairwell. Spencer finds a walker up in a deer blind, tied to the tree. He uses a grappling hook to pull down the man's compound bow, but inadvertently brings the walker down too. Going through its pockets, he finds a note written in Latin. Elsewhere, Rosita, Christian Serratos, and Eugene, Josh McDermott, have gone to make Rosita a bullet. Eugene again tries to talk her out of it, but she insults him as a coward and he meekly gets to work for her. Back in his room, Negan asks Carl what his punishment should be for killing two saviors. Carl says if Negan was smart, he would kill everyone at Alexandria because they will fight him no matter what. Negan seems amused with Carl and decides to take him home. Before leaving, he stops off to insult Daryl, Norman Reedus. As Negan's truck leaves the gates, we see Jesus stowed away on top, but he disappears and continues scouting the sanctuary. Back in his cell, someone slides a note under Daryl's door that says "Go now." Attached to the back of it are a single match and a key. Back near Alexandria, Mikan, Donai Guerrera, has assembled a pile of walkers and laid them across the road. When a Savior Scout drives up and exits her car, Mikan takes her hostage, demanding to be taken to Negan. Out on the road, Rick, Andrew Lincoln, and Aaron, Ross Marquand, come across a gated property. They investigate and believe it could contain a large cache of weapons and food. The only problem, they are stored in a houseboat in the middle of a lake filled with walkers left there as security. Negan arrives at Alexandria and revels in telling Olivia, Anne Mahoney, that he would be happy to sleep with her if she'd like. He also finds Judith in her crib and begins carrying her around, telling her that he could easily kill her father and brother and move himself into the community. The Walking Dead Season 7, Episode 7, Sing Me a Song is an episode where almost nothing happens. This week's episode of The Walking Dead is 62 minutes, 90 with commercials, of non-stop stuff you've seen before. The Walking Dead Season 7 has often felt like a puzzle whose many pieces have been flung about seemingly at random. Every episode so far has focused almost exclusively on a single individual location: Alexandria, Ezekiel's Kingdom, the Savior's Sanctuary, the Hilltop, and Oceanside, the secret village in the woods. Since the series doesn't hop back and forth between different story locations, individual episodes increasingly feel siloed off from each other, suggesting a communication drought forming between every party we've been following this season. Perhaps that's why Episode 7, Sing Me a Song, mainly seems to be about the narrative repeating itself. Indeed, several plot points within the episode repeat themselves. It's a kind of weary, empty Ouroboros. Let's dispatch with a handful of events that happen in this episode in bullet point form. Carl clumsily infiltrates the sanctuary to try to kill Negan. Instead, Negan finds the boy intriguing and decides to show him around, before screwing with him and ultimately bringing him back home. Out foraging for supplies, Rick and Aaron locate what seems to be a convenient cache of weapons and supplies. They suspect this because they find the no trespassing sign of a man who has conveniently carved a message that he has a convenient cache of food, supplies, and ammo. He's also taken the time to add that he's probably conveniently dead by now. The problem, between the cache and them lies a pond full of zombies. Also out foraging for supplies, Spencer locates what seems to be a convenient cache of weapons and supplies. Sound familiar? He finds the cache because a list of caches from a dead guy with a plan is conveniently spelled out in Latin in a note in a zombie's pocket. It's cool that these men have each had the time between zombie killing to painstakingly perform the apocalyptic version of a look at my haul. YouTube video. The problem: Rick has ordered the Alexandrians to deliver all their supplies to the Saviors, and Spencer's not into it. Macon takes a Savior hostage and demands to be taken to Negan. Eugene finally makes that bullet Rosita requested several episodes ago. Negan makes Carl take him on a tour of Alexandria, where he discovers the existence of baby Judith and suddenly declares his intent to move into the town. Lest the number of bullet points make you think this is an action-packed episode, don't be deceived. Yes, there's stuff, like the big reveal of Carl's shot-out eye, and the part where we watch Negan iron a guy's face, just in case we forgot ironing people's faces was a thing he did. Also, number of times people cry in this episode, 6. Number of fat jokes in this episode, 2. Number of women sexually harassed, assaulted, or threatened in this episode, 3. Though really considering Negan has a whole non-consensual harem, this is a perpetual state for all the women in his camp. But none of the above actually drives the plot. Perhaps that's the point, the characters seem to have lost the plot completely. This episode's central idea: repetition, repetition, repetition. Sing Me a Song's repetition is literal. Characters repeat themselves or each other throughout the episode, and the narrative itself seems to temporarily become a skipping record, repeating ideas and parts of the plot the episode already introduced earlier. Director Rosemary Rodriguez, Jessica Jones, has chosen a discordant, leisurely pace, one that seems dictated more by Negan's ominous strolls around the sanctuary rather than what is, we're told, the Alexandrians' sense of urgency about having only one day to find supplies before the Saviors return to collect. We're 52 minutes into the episode before Macon hijacks the Savior, which is finally a moment that would seem to significantly move the season's plot arc along from where we were when the Saviors first came to loot Alexandria. Prior to that moment, the episode feels like a repetitive echo of stuff we already know. Even Macon's hijacking attempt is a repeat of a move we saw at the episode's beginning, when Carl and Jesus stowed away on a Savior supply truck to try to break into the compound. Jesus bails before he makes it inside. The episode flits back and forth between the Alexandrians' various attempts to forage for supplies and Negan's stroll through his grand domain. Except for Rick and Darren, each pair of foraging Alexandrians is at odds with each other. Jesus and Father Gabriel, for instance, each bail on their traveling companions and hike it back to home base. Jesus ditches Carl because he's afraid of getting caught entering the sanctuary, while Gabriel ditches Spencer because Spencer won't shut up about how much he hates Rick. Or take Eugene, who makes the bullet for Rosita, only for her to call him a weak coward. The only reason you're alive is because you lied and because people feel sorry for you. Eugene cries. Even within this episode, it sometimes takes several scenes for actions to make any sense. For instance, Macon beheads a zombie, then drags it away to parts unknown in the opening scene. But we don't return to her to find out what she was up to until nearly the episode's end. Thus, the episode's pace is glacial, even before you consider the centerpiece is Negan-ing his way around the sanctuary, something that grew exhausting and repetitive 3 or 4 episodes ago. Perhaps all of this inaction and repetition is a way of inducing the same exhausted weariness in the viewer that Negan's followers at the sanctuary must feel. We already know Negan has a harem, and a labor camp, and a sadistic streak. We already know that he irons faces. We already know he likes to bluster and threaten and enact psychological torture. But showing the viewer these things again and again is a way of wearing us down, putting us in the position of Negan's victims. Really, it's almost too on the nose that according to Robert Kirkman, writer of the comics Walking Dead is based on, Negan used to be a used car salesman. Even worse, most characters ultimately bail on the decisive actions they undertake. Jesus hops on the van with Carl, then chickens out. Carl hesitates to kill Negan even when he has a gun trained on him. Daryl is given a chance to escape solitary confinement but doesn't take it. Dwight and Sherry, whose relationship is starting to crack under the deal they've made with Negan, to let Sherry marry him in exchange for their safety, have a wary argument over the choice they already made. Negan himself is ambivalent about what to do with multiple misbehaving members of his compound, as well as Carl. After Negan spends a few hours leading Carl around the sanctuary and ordering him to dance to the beat of Lucille's rhythm, the boy finally calls Negan's bluff. Negan doesn't intend to hurt the kid. Negan rarely seems to have much of a plan beyond threats and occasional outbursts of violence, but it's especially apparent here that strategy isn't really his strong suit. Instead, bullying is. Perhaps the episode's most moving moment comes when Negan humiliates Carl by making Carl take off his bandage and eye patch. Tellingly, this moment as filmed is framed as a more chilling and psychologically dramatic moment than the moment as seen earlier when Negan casually extorts a vow of fidelity from one of his wives by threatening to hurt her family. Negan then apologizes to Carl, threatens a random minion, and forces a clearly terrified Carl to sing him a song while he swings Lucille around. Later, a scene between Negan and Olivia mirrors the earlier scene with Carl. In rapid succession, he mocks Olivia, calls her fat, makes her cry, then offers to have sex with her. In both scenes, he baits and switches his victims, a classic abuse tactic of withholding, then offering love in rapid succession. But it's still surprising that Negan's victims react the way they do. It's hard to believe that Olivia, who's survived zombies, wolves, and a prior threat from Negan, would burst into tears after a single fat joke. These two scenes are supposed to reveal how unerringly Negan targets both Carl and Olivia's weaknesses, which in both cases happen to involve their physical appearance. But Olivia's role as an oversensitive fat lady is ridiculous, and Carl's breakdown comes after he's gunned down 2 men earlier that day without so much as batting an eye, or having his eye batted, if you get my drift. It's difficult to buy Negan's schoolyard bully tactics having so great an effect on either character, and by extension almost everyone else the tyrant meets. That was an example of breaking balls, Negan tells Carl, like some sort of demented mentor. But even Negan seems ambivalent about the forms his bullying takes at this point. Maybe he's gotten bored of himself. And given that Jeffrey Dean Morgan recently stated that he'll still be on the show in Season 8, that's not a good sign for any of us.